Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a good start to this week. It's Tuesday, so Tag Tuesday. This is going to be a book tag, but it's not going to be that anti-TBR tag that I've seen running around the past week, and today especially. The cafeteria at school was out of Haterade, at least the flavor I drink, so I couldn't get in the right headspace for that tag. This is the other direction. It's the nostalgia tag that Noah at Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse created like 2 months ago, and very much more the headspace I was in today, and so I hope you enjoy this. The first prompt is, the oldest book from your life that you still own. Well, it is my coverless copy of Watership Down by Richard Adams. I have mentioned before, I've read this book in every decade of my life. To be even more specific, when I received this book, I was still young enough that I had a stuffed animal. I had stuffed animals, one of which was a rabbit named Bigwig. Bigwig is gone, but I still have the book. Love it. Love reading it. Looking forward to reading it with my daughters. The prompt 2 was the first library book that you loved. And I was trying to think through, and I was fortunate that I grew up in a house where both my parents were readers, really all my grandparents were readers, so people were reading to me all the time. And on my mom's side, I was, I think, like the 7th grandchild born. So I have cousins who are like 7, 9 years older than me. They had moved on from children's books and little chapter book. They were in chapter books, moved on from children's books. So we received a huge number of those. So in terms of like what I was getting from the library, it was like Berenstain Bear copies that I didn't have. But I do remember getting into that age where I was reading chapter books and just being absolutely fascinated by the the Beverly, Cleary and Judy Blume books, Tales from a Fourth Grade Nothing, Fudge, Ramona. I loved those. I loved getting those from the library and reading those when I was in elementary school. They were so much fun. Again, looking forward to reading those with my daughters. Prompt 3, a book that was given to you. So this was a gift when I was like 18 for Christmas, Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. And it was one I had sort of read like a list of stuff I might be interested in reading on the internet. And this, was something I put on the Christmas list that year, and it felt kind of timely to say that's the kind of gift I want to think about, at the end of November. And so it was great reading this in college. I read this in like a 1 day or 1 weekend period in college, and just was fascinated by it. Still am. Prompt 4, a book that was recommended to you. Wow, this was kind of fun. I was trying to think of this, and then I realized that someone on BookTube recommended this book to me. It's The Gallows Pole by Benjamin Myers. I have not read it yet, but I'm really interested. I think it was Hester who recommended it, and I remember reading the description, like, that sounds fascinating. So I finally was able to find a copy online and order it, and so I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. I'm not sure when, but in the next year at least. Maybe sooner. Prompt 5, a book you read with someone. Well, my wife and I have had a long habit since we've been dating and then we're engaged and now married. We read at least one book together every year. And it's one of our favorite sort of family traditions. It's something we really enjoy. And we often sort of, we never plan it out a year in advance or 2 years in advance what it's going to be. It just sort of happens organically. Of one of us says, hey, I'm thinking of reading this, and the other one will look at me. No, I want to read that too. Let's make that our book this year. This year it was Romance in Marseille by Claude McKay, which was an amazing book, a real delight, and one that I highly, highly recommend. It was written 80 years ago, but was just published this year for the first time. Another one that we had a lot of fun reading, and I think this was sort of the third one we read where we said, hey, let's actually do this as a tradition, as a couple. We had read two previous books, Dance with Dragons, because we were both readers of the Song of Ice and Fire series, and then Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow. But we decided to read The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova together, and we were reading it right around the time of our dating anniversary that year. So it was just really a fun time, a fun, a deep, heavy. It's a long book and it has some depth to it. So it was great to discuss. It was long enough that we were able to read it over a week period, 2-week period, and just be discussing it all the time. And it's something I just really enjoy about our marriage and relationship. Prompt 6, a book that was introduced to you in school. Now there's a joke from the movie The Squid the Whale, which is funny but also has just absolutely toxic, poisonous characters. One of whom the son goes, we're reading A Tale of Two Cities in school, Dad. Is it any good? And the dad's like, well, it's minor Dickens. I think, David Copperfield or Great Expectations are richer. And the mom goes, well, you should read it for yourself. And the kid, so I don't want to waste my time, if that's what Dad thinks. It's just awful. But there's a statement there where the dad goes, what is it about school? You read all the worst books by the great writers. So I have David Copperfield. We didn't read this in school. I don't think we read any Dickens in school. Maybe A Christmas Carol, like in middle school. But a couple that jumped out specifically from high school were great short stories. So short stories like The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell, or The Interlopers by Saki. If you've never read either of those, just fantastic short stories. And then in college, I was fortunate enough to read Lysistrata by Aristophanes. And that is one of my favorite plays. It's an absolutely hysterical, delightful play. It always makes me laugh, but it also takes me back to the first time I realized, oh my gosh, Greek comedy was beyond R-rated. It was the original Not Safe for Work. So, loved Lysistrata. Prompt 7 is genre fiction that inspires nostalgia. So I had, I love genre fiction. I've noticed one of the questions on the anti-TBR is like, what's the genre fiction? I'm like, I like it. Genre fiction's fun. I got to go with Tony Hillerman. I remember seeing my dad read these and purchase these as some of the later ones came out in the early 1990s. And this was the thing here in Arizona because this was a local writer, mystery set on the Navajo tribal nation. And they're fascinating. And I can still remember finally getting a chance to be of an age where I could comprehend what the books were about and read one. The covers were always fantastic. They had a skull and mountains, just absolutely fascinating covers, and a title like Skinwalkers. And so to explore Navajo beliefs, but also to have mystery locations of towns that exist in my state that we would drive past or drive to, was just really fascinating. And then this is just a great great author, great series, one I've always loved. Let's see. The other ones, this is sort of like a one, is if you've ever read any of the Alfred Hitchcock's Three Investigators series, this is genre fiction as a kid. That series is really, really fun. I don't actually have a copy because those books are hard to come by, but I keep an eye out. Eventually I'll get a couple for my daughters to read when they're a little bit older. But those ones are really cool. There's one that's, I think it's the first one, The Screaming Castle or something, where it deals with silent films. Just really interesting books. Prompt 8, a literary work that inspires nostalgia. So I've got two that very different directions. One is Dancing in the Dark by Janet Hobhouse. And the reason for that is I first read this book at a time where we had just become parents. I had taken on a new position at work. My wife had gone back to work, and so we were really we were super stressed. We weren't sleeping much. We were just exhausted all the time, and we were we were never worried about our relationship, but we were recognizing our relationship is changing and we have to change too. And what is that like? And that's really what this whole book is about, except it's set during the disco era, and their relationship is changing because they're doing too many drugs and stuff. So we were at very different places in life. But reading this book, it helped me appreciate, life, changes are happening in life all the time. That the Mutability Cantos of Edmund Spenser are one of my favorite poems. But how you deal with those changes and recognizing that there are changes that are good and changes that, you sort of want to step back and pause. So that's what this book elicits for me. But the other one, this is kind of a sillier story, but that would be The Book of My Life by Girolamo Cardano. And this isn't literary fiction, but it's a literary work. Cardano was one of those Renaissance writers, but also a mathematician, just very involved in many different works. And I was reading this book when our second daughter started walking. And it was a little essay on exercise and sports and stuff. And I'm reading this Renaissance essay on sports. And I look up and I see my daughter's just about to move, and I kind of stand up and get the phone so I can catch it. And she goes running, you know, across the room, and I was like, so this inspires some nostalgia too. I have it so I can see it on the bookshelf from where I sit when I'm eating like breakfast or dinner. I can see it, and it brings back some fun memories. Prompt 9, a spiritual text that inspires nostalgia. So in my, you know, faith tradition of Protestant Christianity, we read the Bible. Not like everybody in the church read the Bible, and kids were encouraged to read the Bible, and not just, you know, the sanitized stories, but it was like, we're going to read Judges this month. And Judges was probably one of the most fascinating as a kid, in part because my father was a state powerlifting champion when he in the 1970s, and he still retained a huge amount of that strength, you know, when I was a kid. We're talking 15 years later, but he was still extraordinarily strong. And so when I would read about Samson and Judges, I was like, yeah, that's basically my dad. And Judges just is a fascinating book that also opens up to some really like horrifying, especially the end. It's really quite horrifying what happens with the tribe of Benjamin. But really, the books of Judges and then 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, and seeing like reading those as a kid, and you know, they're fascinating. But as you reread it as an adult, you realize like, wow, this is scary. The other one that it's a spiritual work, and that's The Conference of the Birds by Attar, which is an amazing, amazing work. But I have this great illustrated like children's edition that has just astonishing illustrations. It's just, they're so, so beautiful. And, you know, my daughters, I read this one with my daughters, and we love this book. So that's the nostalgia tag. It says Prompt 10 was tag people. This one has been around. I don't know if I can't remember if a lot of people did this 2 months ago and noted. But I highly recommend, you know, if you want to, you know, sort of cleanse the palate of the anti-TBR tag, try the nostalgia tag. Thank you.